shows live with Amanda Murray and Nick Motioka. How do you say your surname, Nick? Nick?
It's Nick Motichka.
Motichka. Which language is that?
It's Czech, but it's definitely a few generations ago. So.
All right, it's awesome. I love it. I love your surname is awesome. It's really awesome. So Nick is joining us, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself. And Nick, please over to you. Introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Nick, and I am here for the first time. I'm excited to talk to these ladies and explore some things that I maybe haven't went that deep on before. So I'm living in Canada. I'm in central Alberta, and I have just resigned from the only profession I've ever known for my entire adult life, which was policing. And I'm just opening a whole new chapter in my life and trying some new things.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nick. Over to you, Amanda. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, my name is Amanda Catrell. I am a teacher, I'm an author, and I am an illustrator. And I've been a regular on the talk show for a while. If you guys just mute, I'm getting a little bit of feedback.
Okay.
I actually invited Nick to come on because I know his story and I know how hard he's been working and how much he's impacted people across Canada. So I'm also from Canada. I teach in Calgary. And I know Nick from a long time ago, and it actually reconnected with him because something that he did went viral, across Canada anyways. And I actually had people in the middle of Costco telling me about Nick. And then I pulled up the video and was like, oh, that is somebody that I actually know. And they asked me to go reach out to him and thank him. And so that's kind of how Nick and I reconnected, was through something that another person had sent to me that went viral. But I had already seen it and I didn't even know it was him. And I was like, oh, it's like this police officer is like just speaking to my heart right now. And then like the next day I found out that it was actually somebody I knew. So we change a lot in like 30 years or 20 years. But I'm excited to be here as always, and I'm really excited about the topic today because I think it's really important.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amanda and Nick. So our topic today is how to live in alignment with your morals and your values. And Nick, you chose the topic, did you?
Sort of. I wrote down something that we had been talking about, and I said, oh my goodness, this would be such a good topic for the talk show that I'm on. And so that's kind of where it came from, but I'll let Nick talk.
Okay, so you both were discussing the topic because you handed over the topic to me. So I just really like you guys to explain to the audience how you came to choose the topic and what it means and what you would like the audience to gain from this topic. Because I've already gained the topic. I paid attention to it today, and I've done some research. And I think it's amazing. So I'm going to leave it to you. I don't know whether you want Nick to go or Amanda. Please take the stage.
So, like Amanda said, we were having a conversation about kind of what is happening in the world and where we are at with our own careers and just where our lives have led us to this point. And it came up just talking about what success means to different people. And while traditionally that would mean financial success, for other people it means something else. And we were talking about that. And for me right now, like I said, I did just resign from the only profession I know. And so I've kind of went away from, I guess, the traditional way of being, specifically in North America for sure. And how even financially maybe making a decision that isn't as beneficial to you in the moment, that success can mean different things. And for me right now, my success, or how I define my success, is living in complete alignment with my values and with my morals. And so despite the financial implications of resigning from a job, right now I feel more successful than I ever have in my life. And the only reason I can come to, or the only result I can come to and base that on, is the fact that right now I'm living in complete alignment with my values, with my morals. And for me right now, that feels like success.
I really like what Nick talks about, because it's something that I really focus on as well, is that success looks differently for everyone. And one of the things that I'm working on is writing, I'm getting feedback again, if you guys mute. One of the things that I'm working on right now is writing a book called Rethinking What It Means to Be Educated, because there's so many people in our school systems who don't feel successful because they barely passed high school, or they didn't go on to university. And I know we've had conversations about this topic before, but I think it's so important for people to really follow what aligns with them. Don't just go to school because your parents told you to. Don't just go to do something because your teacher said you had to. Do something because it aligns with you. And I don't know if you know Dave Pikely at all, or Pickley or something. Anyways, he's the author of the Dog Man series, and he was kicked out of the classroom most of the time, most of his entire elementary school. And the teachers told him he couldn't draw comics for a job. And now he's like one of the most successful children's authors in the world. And I just think that story is so amazing, because he followed what he was aligned with. I don't know if he passed school or not, but like he clearly has followed his passion and done so well. And I know as a teacher, and I know Nick as a police officer in Canada, we've had some really hard times this last year with what's gone on with our government. And it's really hard to stand up and speak from what you're aligned with, because that doesn't always happen. And I know some of the similar stuff happened in the UK as well, where you are, Nomza, but not to the extent it's happening here and continues to happen here. Because if you're not vaccinated, you still can't fly in Canada, which is absolutely insane. And people aren't speaking up. And while I had a conversation with my principal yesterday, actually, and it was around like supporting people, and I said to her, like, yeah, there were people who supported people individually, but no one stood up. Like, you have to be able to stand up when something's not right. You can't just be a bystander. And we teach about this in school. We teach about how being a bystander is you're still guilty of what's going on. So if somebody's bullying somebody and beating them up, and you just help them afterwards and didn't stop the bully, then you're still part of the problem. And this is something that we teach in elementary school, is that you can't just be a bystander. And yet so much of our population was just a bystander, just watching, and continues to this day. And it just blows my mind, because this is something that we teach in elementary school, is don't be a bystander. If you see something going that is wrong, you don't have to go up to the bully and tell them that they're doing something wrong, but go and get help from a teacher, or go and get help from an adult, or go and call the police and say, hey, I saw these kids being really mean to this kid and doing this, and do something to create positive change in the world. And if we're not doing that, then we have a huge problem, because this is something that's being taught in elementary school, and it's not continuing past that. And even in my classroom, when there's an authority figure, kids are too afraid to stand up. Even when I honestly make a mistake, they won't stand up and tell me I made a mistake. So this fall, I was teaching them about the equinoxes, and we learned all about the equinoxes. And for their agenda that day, I wrote, today is the vernal equinox. And every single kid wrote it in their agenda, and we learned all about all of the equinoxes and the solstices that day. Every single kid took it home. Their parents even signed it, and they brought it back to school. And as I was reading some of the work that they did earlier that day, I was like, oh my goodness. I just told them to all write, today is the vernal equinox, and it's actually the autumnal equinox. Not a single kid stood up and told me, Miss Catrell, you got it wrong. So the next day, I was so mad at them. I was like, what did Miss Catrell do wrong yesterday? Is what I put on the board. Nobody had a clue. Nobody, they just all stared at me. And then I was like, I'm going to make you watch this video again. So we watched the video again. And then at the end of the video, I said, what did Miss Catrell do wrong yesterday? They said, you told us to put the vernal, today's the vernal equinox, not the autumnal equinox. I'm like, yeah. Like, did none of you recognize that when you're writing it in your agenda after we just watched 3 videos on the equinoxes, and then we all wrote about it being the vernal equinox and what you had learned and what you thought it was. And then an hour later, I tell you to write it's the vernal equinox today, and none of you stood up and told me that I was wrong. None of you. And I was like, and some of them were like, well, I thought about it, but I just wrote down what you said. And I'm like, no, this is not okay. This is not okay, grade 5. Like, if I say something wrong, or if I write something wrong on the board, you stick your hands up and you tell me. Because if you are actually right, I will apologize, or I'll be like, oh yeah, I was like, because in my head, I was like scribbling something down quickly for the agenda and then trying to go and read with another kid, and I wasn't even thinking. And well, that was like a huge learning thing for me and for the kids, because it was like, you need to stand up when somebody does something wrong. Even if it's as simple as the teacher writing, today is the vernal equinox on the board, when it's actually the autumnal one. Like, it just blows my mind that that's still happening. Like, and kids are scared of authority, and I'm not that scary of a teacher. Nick, I would just comment, because Nomza obviously had to run to something.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That's a great example that you give of how in our society, I think we have gone too far the opposite way, away from that and not questioning anything. And you're seeing it in physical form with what's happened specifically in the last couple of years, where people just don't want to rock the boat, and they don't want to make any waves, and they don't want to offend anyone or be, I guess, have any sort of a spotlight pointed on them. So they just go along with these different things that are happening in society, even when, like right now, when they don't make sense anymore. And I think, well, there's a number of things I think happening there, but for what's happening in Canada right now, I think is a lot of people who aren't directly affected by the remaining mandates. They just move on with their life, and life is a lot easier if you don't even think about what's going on. And so you just focus on, I guess, individually what directly affects you. But the short-sightedness of that is just, we're seeing it obviously in how bad things can get if nobody stands up and nobody questions. I think that's completely natural and normal to need that in society. We always heard up until more recently that science isn't science unless it can be questioned. And I think that's maybe what needs to happen more in the world, is people need to stand up and question things, and the people that make those decisions need to be held accountable.
Agree with you, Nick. I think basically we also need to teach our children as well. Like Amanda was saying, that children need to learn to communicate. If there's something that they need to understand, they need to question. But within the society, if you someone that basically questioning things, if you want to find out about things, you will be seen as someone who is causing trouble. And I've seen it even with the church where I go to. And the people are even scared. They don't even say amen. When the preacher preaches, they don't even say amen because they don't want to be the one, that the odd one. So when I go to church, for me, I'm just like, this is God's house. I can be who I want to be. So I go crazy. So I've started seeing people's attitude now. Their attitude is like their personality. They are bringing their personality out, starting to respond when a speaker speak, when the preacher preaches. If it relates to them, what they are feeling, they actually respond to that message. But sometimes people, they are just scared of, is that a fear of being judged? At the same time, why would you not live your own life worrying about being judged? And Amanda was right by teaching the kids to say, listen, if there is something that you don't understand, it is okay. Or if you see that I've made an error, it's okay to remind me. It's okay. I'm not, just because she's a teacher, it doesn't mean she's always right. So it is okay to question things, because that's how you learn. For me, basically, I question. I love question. I started questioning my parents. I see them, they are together, and I'm like, why did you marry her? I question my father. Why did you marry my mom? Why did you divorce? We explain, because it's something that I do need to understand. And it's also basically, Nikki was saying, you left your job, and because of your core values, you've worked for this job for many, many years, and now you feel that it is time to experience something different. But if it was somebody else, they'll be scared of finances. They'll be scared of, how am I gonna live? Am I gonna get another job? But you've made a decision that whatever will be, and I'm gonna try something else. And I saw your website as well for your clothing line as well, so which is cool. And so it's your values, it's your beliefs. When you believe in something, you never know until you try it. You never know until you basically you live based on your values. If you don't live based on your values, your purpose, what's the point of living? You'll be frustrated, depression. So you might as well just make sure that basically everything that you do, it aligns with your values and your beliefs. That's where the true authenticity comes out. I call it, when my clients comes, so I always say, what are you wearing? And they're like, what are you talking about? So I'm like, are you wearing a fake coat, or are you wearing your true authenticity coat? So they're like, I'm not sure. I'm like, are you being fake, basically? Because if you are real, you call yourself out. So it is very, very important to basically, if you're someone who is scared, to write down your values and test them out, test yourself out, to tell your family that I'm trying to be me, and I'm testing my values. For me, sometimes when my friends, they call me and say, no, let's go out cinema, if I'm really, really tired, I'm not going to say yes. I'm just going to say, listen, guys, I'm going to have cinema at home. I just sit up and watch TV, or just have a rest. But some people will just say yes. I know my friends love me, and I know I love them. And I wouldn't want them to actually do something just for the sake of making me happy. That is not right. Over to you, Amanda.
Well, I just ran upstairs to get some notes that I had from when I talked with Nick before. And one of the things we were talking about was the human psychology, and that if we're comfortable, then people ignore things. And it's also really easy to fool people, but it's super hard for people to admit that they've been fooled. And so I was actually talking with a friend about this a while ago, because his family is Mormon, and has some, he's not Mormon, but his family is Mormon. And he talked about like the polygamous colonies that are in the States that like one of his uncles is in. And he's like, they did research on it. Literally takes 3 hours to completely brainwash someone. So if you are a vulnerable person, 3 hours. 3 hours is how long it takes. And that's how they get these people into those polygamy colonies and stuff like that. And like, if you love a polygamy colony, like by all means, like all the power to you, no judgment. But if you're luring somebody who's vulnerable in, and you're using that psychology to brainwash people into something that might not be aligned with them completely, then I see a problem with it. So this brainwashing, 3 hours, like that is like mind blowing to me, that in 3 hours that there's been research done that they can convince people of something. And then I was talking with my daughter the other day because she's left-handed and she's having a little bit of anxiety about some things. And she's like, Mom, I saw this thing on the internet that left-handed people die earlier. And I was like, honey, that's not true. I'm like, you can't believe everything you see on the internet. And I'm like, honestly, honey, like your great grandma smoked and drank her entire life and she lived to 97 years old. Like you have a better chance of living longer than probably half the people on this planet because you have genetics from like a huge smoker and drinker that lived into her 90s with never taking care of herself at all. So I think you're good. Don't believe what you find on the internet. But at the same time, though, you can be brainwashed by the internet, by what's on the TV. But if people started believing that all left-handed people are going to die sooner, or they're stupid, or like even that was something back like 100 years ago or 50 years ago, even, is they would try to convince people who are left-handed to be right-handed in the schools, and they convinced them. Like even my mom, when my daughter was left-handed, started showing left-handed tendencies when she was a baby, my mom was like, oh, that's not good. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, who cares if she's left-handed? There's nothing wrong with being left-handed. Nothing. Actually, there's research out there saying that they're sometimes the most intelligent and most creative people on the planet, statistically speaking. But like, there's no guarantee that she's going to be one of those people. But being left-handed is not a disability. And people have been convinced that that is a disability, especially people in an
No, people who are left-handed, they're smart. My younger sister, she's left-handed. She's very smart. Hope's dad is left-handed, is very, very, very smart. Most of people that I know who are left-handed, some they use both hands, right and left. They are very, very smart.
Yeah, so there's this like belief, or what's the word? Like discrimination in some ways around left-handedness because of how a generation or a few generations ago they were taught in school that if you were left-handed, they tried to convince you to be right-handed, especially in Canada. And that's still a like belief that my mom has about children, and then it's like even projected onto my daughter, and it's like, this is not okay. Like we need to stop those things and be in alignment with what's true for us, but also be able to question those beliefs that are not serving anyone, and question the beliefs of like, okay, even if in general all of this group of people are this certain way, it doesn't mean that that one person is going to be that way, right? We are all our own unique individuals, and we all have our own power, and we all have our own unique creative gifts, and you cannot group people into boxes. And I think that's something that's happened over and over again throughout history. And if you look at the history in different countries, we've put people in boxes and we've discriminated against them numerous times throughout history, over and over and over again. It's repeated itself in different form. And that's what's really scared me about the last couple of years, is because this discrimination and this putting people in boxes is history repeating itself over and over and over again. And until the human race realizes that we are all human, this isn't going to change.
Do you want to go, Nick, comment on what Amanda just said?
So yeah, I totally agree, and I'm left-handed, so I'm an example of that. I guess I'm young enough where I wasn't trying, no one forced me to try and convert. But yeah, it's a crazy thing it's an example of how we put people in boxes and how just these societal norms and values start to influence how we parent potentially. And it's interesting for sure. And I totally agree that it's definitely seems to be a theme in human history. You go back, well, as long as we've been around, and we do the most awful things in the name of fitting in and excluding other groups, whatever that group is at the time. And it's never been a good thing for us, that's for sure. And we are definitely just repeating that history again. In my opinion anyways, it's getting so crazy now with the way society's heading and excluding people, and I guess the woke culture in a way. And it's getting so crazy that I feel like we're getting to a point where things are going to change because of just how crazy it is. And I feel that coming in the collective consciousness, where we'll get to a point where people all of a sudden, even if they don't rationally or on purpose think about these things, will all of a sudden wake up one day and just feel differently. And I think that's because the vibration of the planet is raising. And I feel very hopeful about the future. I am not naive to think that it's going to be an easy road or quick necessarily, but I do definitely feel hope for the future. And then just to touch on one other thing, we were talking about fitting in and how people, yeah, definitely gravitate towards that to have that sense of almost inner calm in a way, to not rock the boat and not be singled out. And I just counter that in a way and just suggest that for me, especially at this point in my life, how it feels to be truly in alignment with my morals and values far outweighs fitting in and feeling that sense of, I don't know, yeah, belonging in a group. I would way rather fit in and belong with myself.
That is so true, Nick. You don't have to try to fit in to be like pretend to be something that you're not. Because when you enter someone's life and you pretend to be something that you're not, at the end of the day, you end up being frustrated. I've done that before in my life 10 years ago. I used to go and meet my friends or family members. I'll start behaving the same way, that the way they behave, until actually I realize that actually I need to be me. I need to basically live within my values. I basically created principles in my life, and I had to ask myself if I need to live, what are my core values that I need to live by. So I had to, I've never wrote them down. I had to look at myself basically and say, if I'm saying I'm this, do I represent what I'm saying? This is who I am. Like if I say I'm a matchmaker or I'm a love harmonist, being a matchmaker, I have to understand the meaning of love. I have to understand what it means, unconditional love, what it means to set boundaries, what it means to love yourself, what it means to basically understand your values, your beliefs, what it means to actually live and be the person that you want to be. No, maybe like go on social media, I see Amanda, she's wearing this beautiful dress, and I'm like, wow, she's looking good, and I'm gonna go and buy the same thing. And that is taking glory away from Amanda. That is basically not celebrating Amanda. So I've learned to, when I see a celebrity and they are wearing these beautiful clothes, I've learned to admire it, admire their body of what they are and what they are wearing, and just leave it there and just say, I am individual and I'm gonna have my own style, not their style. But before, if I see a celebrity and they are looking all skinny, and for me, basically, like the society is basically showing our children that there's only one body that is sexy, which is skinny. So I will see a celebrity and I'll be like, I just want to look exactly like her. Because in the newspaper, they are like praising them that they look awesome. So I used to believe that being skinny is awesome. But now I'm realizing that it's okay to be supersized. It's okay to be this size. It's okay to be average. It's okay to be skinny. So I'm learning to embrace everyone. When I see somebody or a celebrity, instead of judging them, I just have to admire them, send love, and just leave it there and just create my own life. Because like what you're saying, that everyone basically in our society, we try to fit in, but are we actually living our lives to the full? No. Because when you try to fit in, that means you live someone else's life. So for me, basically, I love to live my life. And it's something that I've learned the hard way, that I need to be me. I don't have to be somebody else. I need to be authentic. And when I I always tell my friend, like sometimes I take pictures with my family, and my friends will be like on social media, wow, this is amazing. And I'm be like, or sometimes they'll see me, like I love clothes, and they'll see me like if I go to church, and they'll be like, you always look glamorous. So I'm like, listen, don't you start going and spending loads of money on clothing. I register on website to put my email when there is a special offer, 90%, 50%. Like I went to food shopping the other day. So I was like, why is this meat here? So then I went and dragged the shop assistant, and I was like, oh, I saw the meat there. Does it mean something? And she was like, oh, yeah, it's 90% off. And everyone in this house, my house, loves chicken, and the prices have gone up. So she was like, 90% off. And I was like, can I have it all? And this guy turns up and he wanted some. So I said to him, listen, pick whatever you want. I'm taking all the chicken. And the guy picked, and he was like, I think that's enough now for me, Nomsa. And I was like, he took some, and then I took some, and I was like, give me all of it. I'm gonna take this chicken. It's just having, but if it was before, I wouldn't even want to ask. I would be really scared to go to somebody and say, please, can you help me? But it is okay to be the person that you want to be. It's okay to be old. People call those who are different the old ones, and they call, but deep down in their heart, they would love to do the things that you do, to be themselves. So they wouldn't love to be you, but they would love to just to be free. But they're just scared. Like my family call me old one, because it's like when I'm not okay, I'm not okay. I'm not gonna pretend. I have a group with my family. They are in Africa, I'm in the UK. So I don't put that face where I say, look at me, my life. I'm in United Kingdom. I have this wonderful life. So my family know that when I'm not okay, I'm not okay. And God knows when I'm not okay, I'll be screaming and say, help me. So I think it's okay to live that life. Nikki is saying that basically. And even Amanda, you're talking about, was it Amanda or Nikki talking about being brainwashed? People who are being brainwashed to believe. Yeah, Amanda, you were saying people basically are using psychology to brainwash people. And that is true. There's times where sometimes I watch TV and I'll start behaving the same way that I'm behaving. And so what's his name? Is it Johnny Depp? Johnny Depp? His trial. One of my friends was telling me about the trial, and I was like, I don't even want to watch it, because it makes me sad that we enter a relationship, and relationship is all about problems. But when we split up, the world doesn't need to know. And I was saying, listen, any woman that has been, I'm not judging or anything, but to tell the truth, any woman out there that has been abused or anything, I've watched people on TV, I've watched people setting up charities. Every woman that has gone through abuse, they wouldn't be claiming money. They will be basically wanting him, whatever he did, to be put in prison for what he did. So I was like, it's okay when you marry someone that has money, but we have to realize that there are consequences. The relationship and we don't need to take each other to court. So I was like, it makes me sad that we are now treating marriages as a business. Basically, it's not just the celebrities, even people. I get women saying, I'm looking for a rich man to take whatever they have. And I'm like, I thought a relationship is all about love. Why would you want somebody else's money? So I'm like, no, my clients don't work like that. So I'm like, I help my clients to avoid expensive divorce by finding the right person. So I'm like, the relationship is not about taking, it's about love. And when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We go separate ways. So I said to my friend, I'm not watching that thing. Basically, it's depressing me. I'm not saying he's right or she's wrong. All I'm saying is these two people, when they met, there was some love agreement. I think it should stay that way. Even if somebody has hurt you or anything, set up a charity or let them get them punished, not without money in it. Money and abuse, it doesn't go on. So if I was to abuse Nick, you are a policeman. Would money make you better? No, it wouldn't. You know, you worked in the police department where families have lost their loved ones through killing, through all these abuse. You know how they've gone through. Money does not make anything better. So I agree with Amanda that sometimes we get brainwashed.
As you were speaking about marriage, I was just thinking about how, like, throughout history, marriage was actually a social contract. So we're really, when we look at it from the love perspective, we're really like, this is a new thing from the last few generations, because throughout history it was a money contract in lots of ways, and that is something that has begun to shift, and for good reason. In my view anyways, not everyone would view it that way, but that is the collective consciousness of the planet starting to shift from marriage being a social contract to being something of love and compassion and empathy and partnership. And that's something that's only really shifted in the last like 150 years. It hasn't been throughout human history in that way. And so I think if we switch that a little bit, Nomza, we can see where that comes from, and we can have empathy for it, because lots of that is generational brainwashing. Right? Like, it's not something that's just happened recently. It's something that's been throughout human history forever and ever and ever. One thing, when you guys were talking, I was just looking at the notes that I had taken before on morals that you live in alignment with. So what is it that are the morals that you live in alignment with each and every day? And I really think that's something important to question. So, and your morals can be different than other people's. And I always believe, like, that as long as you're not harming someone else, believe whatever you want, right? As long as you're not hurting somebody else, because I'm not a religious person at all, but if people want to believe in God or in Jesus or in Allah or in, I can't even remember all the other ones, but I believe that they have absolutely all of the right to align with their morals and to believe what they believe, and to follow their alignment and their passions, because they're aligned with that for a reason. And we have no right to judge. And if somebody is seeking a relationship, I wasn't even thinking this before, but seeking a relationship based on money, then their morals are based on a social contract that they haven't come to understand has completely shifted in society, right? And it hasn't shifted in all of society, but it is something that that is beginning to shift. And I think even that is something that we can be really aware of is when you go into a relationship, what are your values? What is aligned with you? Because many people in relationships, and different relationships, it can be friendships, it can be partnerships, it can be work relationships. If you're not aligned with your values, then you're going to see disease in some aspect of your body or your being, or just the stress level that you're going through will go up. And so I really ask you to question, like, are my morals aligned with my job? Are my morals aligned with my friendships? And if they're not, then you need to change something. And I think that's something that Nick has actually had the power to do, is to step up and say, you know what, this really doesn't align with my values anymore, and this is why. And I can't just watch anymore. And that is huge. People who can stand up and they can say that, they're the most powerful people in the world, because they're completely aligned with their values. And to be completely aligned with your values takes a lot of inner power, because we have so many things coming at us all of the time. And if you can really sit with yourself and be completely aligned with who you are, you're one of the most powerful people in the world.
So I'll just kind of go on that thought. And so for me, I felt it for a lot of years in policing. Some of the things that we were being asked to do just didn't make sense, weren't in alignment with my values. And at that point in my life, I wasn't able to, or I didn't feel like I was able to stand up and question those things. And so I'll give you an example. So it would have been, about 3 years ago. So pre-pandemic. And the team I was on at the time, it was called a gang suppression team. And we were asked to help out with a drug operation. So we were basically the arrest team for an undercover drug operation. And so the operation targeted, basically, it's called high intensity drug trafficking areas in the downtown area. And this was in Calgary, Alberta. And so those areas are generally like outside the safe injection site in downtown Calgary, outside the different shelters, and along a main strip in downtown Calgary called Stephen Avenue. And so what they do is they send out undercover police officers, and they go around and try and buy drugs. And so what ends up happening, though, and I've done a lot of years of drug work undercover as well before I moved into this role. But so what happens is, so these undercover officers are in these areas with people that are addicts. At the end of the day, that's their existence right at this moment. And so what happens is, these people need to support that habit. And so what they'll do is, it's called chipping off. So they'll have a small amount of whatever their drug of choice is, and this undercover cop will come up and ask them if they have drugs. And so they'll sell a small portion of their own personal supply. And in so doing, they're technically trafficking drugs. But we're specifically targeting, in this operation, we're targeting drug users, not drug traffickers. And for me, my morals are that the drug users at the end of the day they're the victim of the drug trafficking and everything that's happened to them in their lives to get them to that point. And they're not the person at all that we should be focusing on. And that was 100% the focus of this operation. So we're turning drug users into drug traffickers and then arresting them. And my job is to now physically go and arrest these people for just being a drug addict. And that, for me, it changed how I felt about policing. And from that moment, I felt a shift in myself. And that's when I really, I guess, came more into alignment with my morals. Again, at that point, I didn't feel comfortable speaking up, and I didn't publicly, of course. In my own small way, I would. So as I'd arrest these people, not that it meant anything to them in that moment, but I would apologize to them, and I'd be very open about how silly that this was and how I disagreed with what was happening. But of course, I was still doing my job, which, looking back now, I of course I wish I would have said more or done more, but it just took me time to come into, I guess, alignment enough to stand up. And so that's what happened to me here since the new year. So what happened in Canada was there was the Freedom Convoy in late January and into early February of this year. I felt an amazing amount of hope and pride for the first time in a long time. And then the convoy got to Ottawa, and then what happened there was the police were used as basically hired goons for the government and for politicians specifically to further their political agendas. And for me, that was my breaking point, where I couldn't watch police officers who, for the most part, signed up for this job to actually help people, and now they were being used by the government as just heavies, basically. And they were going in and seizing fuel from these completely peaceful protesters, and they're infringing on these people's charter rights. So in Canada, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is the supreme law in the land, and you can't supersede someone's charter rights with lesser laws. And what was happening was people's charter rights were being infringed by mischief, like a really low-level criminal code offense, and that was just too much for me, I guess, at that point. And so I did a small thing that ended up going a little viral, like Amanda mentioned. But I just wrote in my journal about how I felt about that and how hard it was for me to watch police officers infringe on people's charter rights. And so I made a video of my journal entry, basically, and it got some traction. And I definitely heard from my police service so I was still employed by the Calgary Police Service at that time. And of course, there's policies where you're not allowed to speak publicly like that and post on social media. And so I was speaking my truth and in alignment with my morals and values. And I was being basically told and ordered to stop doing that. And at that point, in my career was kind of went a direction where I ended up with PTSD and ended up being off work with that, dealing with the effects of it that permeated my entire life. And so at that moment, I had gotten the help that I needed for my PTSD, and we can go into that at some points or another day. But I finally felt like myself again, and it just gave me power to put that out into the world, the video that I made. And then once logistically, I guess the time was right for me, I resigned, and I did that because policing has personally gone away from why I started and why I joined the job to truly help people. And so an example, of course, is that operation I talked about. And then with what is happening with the infringement of people's rights that are just peaceful protesters who ironically are just standing up and questioning what's been happening and the decisions that have been made. And so, like those kids in your class, Amanda, people are standing up questioning, and the Emergencies Act is enacted in Canada, and peaceful protesters are literally trampled with horses in our nation's capital, which was very, very hard to watch for me. So I made the decision that I couldn't be involved in that anymore for a number of reasons. Of course, for my own journey with PTSD, I feel really good. But if I were to go back into that world, I would be back in the same situation I was before I went off work. And I knew that I just couldn't do that. That wasn't in alignment for me. And I resigned from that position and made a bit of a public, I guess, resignation, where I read my resignation letter at a freedom protest, or whatever you want to call it. I read my resignation letter at a gathering in downtown Calgary, and well, for a number of reasons. The main one was to just, for myself, just to be in alignment, and number two was just to give people that are thinking the same way that I am, just to let them know that they're not alone. And so that's what brings me here today.
I just want to touch on what you said really quickly, because one of the things that has stuck with me through all of what's happened in the last few years has been Martin Luther King Jr. And he says, one has the moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. And that's what we've seen across the world. And we study Martin Luther King, and we view him as like this powerful person who shifted history. And yet there are so few people listening to him and doing what he said, which is, like, I think one of the most powerful quotes in all of history. And so very few have the guts to actually do that, to actually say no, because they're afraid of authority. And that's a generational trauma that we're still struggling with. And we need to teach our children, and this is me as a teacher speaking, how to think critically and how to think about, is this law just? Is what my teacher telling me to do just? Because if it's not, you have the duty to stand up to them and say no. Because when we don't say no, when we say then we continue to perpetuate this problem of people just staying and being comfortable and ignoring unjust things. And we can't continue. And I think on so many levels, it can be on the level of the environment. It could be on the level of, like, I just did a project with my class a couple days ago, and it was all of these different perspectives on mining in an area. And one perspective was very like, no mining, like the earth is sacred, and all of this. And then the other was like, we need jobs and I want to make all this money and blah blah. And I was like, we need to listen to both sides and have something in the middle, because when we listen to all sides and we have ideas from multiple people, then we're going to have the best solution that is more beneficial for all. Because I don't think when you only like have one super narrow focus, that's the best solution. The best solution is when you have input from everyone, and then you try your very, very best to find a middle ground. And so through everything that I've watched and that I've listened to, I don't believe either side is right. And when they're on the two extremes, I believe that the answer is somewhere in the middle. And that if we were to really go through these last 2 years again, there should have been open public debate from all areas, from mental health, from like all areas, from a teacher's perspectives, from doctors' perspectives, from mental health perspectives, from police officers' perspectives, from fire department perspectives, because I know that if we would have had input from all levels, even from business perspectives, that we would have had a much better way to deal with this pandemic on a human level, because the way that it was dealt with didn't consider so many aspects of what humans need. And I know this to be true because I know people who are firefighters who used to have 2 or 3 suicides a month, and now they're and getting like 12 calls a month on suicide ones in just one small area of the city that I live in. Now they are having, this was in August, so I can't even imagine how it's increased now. Now they're having 2 to 3 suicides a day. just in one small pocket of the city, and 12 calls a day. So what they used to have in a month is now happening every single day because of people's mental health, because of what they've gone through in the last 2 years that was not considered at all by any level of government. And this is the thing that it's just like, for my morals and for my alignment, is we need to hear voices from every single aspect of society, not just one. Because even as a teacher in a classroom, when I have this idea, my idea might not be the best. And when I get input from the rest of my class, then we can make such a more amazing project or a more amazing task or whatever it is, or even just make our classroom better for that day. Because they could be like, Miss Catrell, I just don't have the capacity to do this project today. And I could be like, okay, let's switch it. We'll do it tomorrow when we're feeling better, when we didn't have our dog die or whatever it is, right? And we have to have compassion for what people actually need, not just for like my vision and my direction, and it has to happen right now. There's so many different pieces coming in all over the place all the time. And I think we really need to consider everyone's morals and everyone's values when we are looking at something, and not violate their morals or values. And I think that's something that's happened throughout the world in the last 2 years, is we have violated humans' fundamental morals and values.
That is
Gnomza, I think you clicked on it and then it went off again.
I actually agree with you, Amanda. Basically, we have to listen to both sides, and I also agree with Nick as well when he say it didn't make sense to arrest people that are actually taking drugs, because when you look at the problem, you have to go to the foundation. If there were not people trafficking drugs, the people who are taking drugs will not be doing that. And also, they are taking drugs because there must be something underlying problems. So they're not criminals. You have to treat them like normal people and try to find out why they do the things that they do. Because some people basically, when it's like when you go to the pub, if you don't have money, what happens? You get drunk because somebody else is going to say, oh, would you like a drink? But if you go to church and you want food, you could actually come out hungry because you feel embarrassed to actually ask for food. So you have to look at these things in a different way. Like I've seen people like people who are drinking, you go to the pub, people are friendly. They want to share what they have. Even in church, like if some people go to church, not everyone that goes to church, basically they are who they say they are. And even the people that are taking drugs, they might be doing it trying to fit in because they've been brainwashed. You go to somebody who is selling drugs and who's trafficking drugs, they're being nice to you. You don't have money, and they show you, oh, I have this money. You look what you could have. So I agree basically with Nick, the values and beliefs that basically the foundation of the problems is the one that needs to be sorted out, not treating the drug users as criminals, because the people who are basically making millions is the people that are trafficking those drugs. And most of the time, they are also doing human trafficking and doing drugs at the same time. So they need to tackle the police problems. They need to tackle the bigger ones, not arresting people that are vulnerable. Vulnerable people, they need to be taken to care, help them get clean, and give them food and counseling as well. Like Amanda was saying, mental health problems is a big problem, and help them with the psychologically, try to go deep psychologically where the problem is and help them. There are so many people who were in drugs before. They're actually they're going around helping people, but for them to be able to be in that situation, I'm sure there was someone from church, someone from police department who looked at them and say, you know, you could change your life. And that's how they ended up changing their lives, and they're going around changing other people's lives. So I think basically our society and the police, whatever the department that might be, is to look at the situation and help them. And help them to become who they want to become. Because I could be at Ngozi talk shows. I was talking to my friend last week, asking her how she is and saying, oh, I should visit Nigeria one day. And then I see on Facebook her oldest one died. So I'm like, hang on a minute. When did this happen? And she was like, it happened on Thursday. And I was like, what happened? So I'm reading the post that her son basically dropped dead. And I was like, this is so painful and life is too short. Instead of, it's like you basically in the government, basically, we can't judge anyone. And like what I'm saying, like what I was saying earlier with the marriages, there are some people that will come to you and tell you, and I'm like, basically, I don't have time to judge them. I'm like, okay, if somebody comes to me and say, I'm looking for a man that is going to look after me wealth-wise, giving me money, health-wise, I'm like, okay, you want that man? You can get that man. I don't tell them what's going to happen in the process of matchmaking. I'm like, you go to a coach. So I refer them to one of my coaches. I know by the time they come out, they're not going to wanting a rich man to look after them. It completely turns around the situation. They come out, they're like, I just need a man that is going to love me for me. So if you try to argue, because it's a psychological problems, if you try to argue with somebody and say, but love and money, it doesn't go together. You have to love yourself first. So I'm like, if you're looking for a man who's got money, I can help you with that. But you have to start with one of my coaches. So one of my coaches will give them 10 sessions or 5 sessions coaching, and they'll come back and say, Noms, I've changed my mind. I'm like, yes, I know. What do you want now? They're like, I'm now looking for love. Connect who I am, and I'm gonna love them whether they have money or they don't have money. I'm like, now you're talking my language. So sometimes it's nice not to judge anyone, just to go to the base, like Amanda was saying that look at like Nick, what he did. His message went viral because his agenda was, I don't agree with this, but I know there's someone out there who feels the same way. So I'm going to put the message out there within the society. And for what you did, can you imagine how many people who are creative, who basically will use their imagination to change people's lives, but they are not doing it because they fear, they don't have courage. And so that's why we have Ngozi talk shows. Ngozi talk shows, we help you to have courage to speak for what you believe in, as long as it's gonna help somebody to develop it, for them to find their own voice and lead from within. So Nick, any words of encouragement before we go? Anyone who is watching it right now and hearing your story, that you had the courage basically to say, you know what, I've been in this job for a very long time. I have my own family, I have my own business, but I feel that it is time for me to try other things. There might be somebody that feels the same way, but they're scared. What advice would you give them?
So I can only say what my journey led me to find out. And for me, my journey took me to a place where I truly love myself. And from that place, that's where I was able to put myself ahead of my career, basically. And that's what brought me into alignment. So I would say, whatever that looks like for you, that's the basis for it, is to just truly love yourself, and the rest will follow.
I'm going to go off of that too and talk about You really need to spend, if you've liked what we've been talking about, I want you to spend a little bit of time today thinking about what aligns with you. And if there are things in your life that don't align with you, what is it that you're going to change today? Even if it's just like one tiny thing. So maybe if it's, I don't even know, maybe if it's like a group of friends who party to the point where they get drunk and excessively, and then you follow that path too. Maybe you still go out with them, but you just choose not to get to that point with them, right? And you choose or whatever it is, like something just tiny that you can do today that's going to just shift something a little bit to align in your values and in who you are. And then tomorrow do the same thing, and tomorrow do the same thing, and eventually you'll be a completely different person and be so aligned with who you truly are. The other thing is, I wanted to just like comment on the power that Nick has done, because he's now trying to empower people through this clothing line that he's starting, which is going to be like organic and natural, and make sure that it's the people who are building it are making the stuff, have a living wage, and just like this whole grassroots organization to make the world a better place from a very like simple part and small part, right? And if all of us started to do little things like what he's doing, where it's natural clothing from, and people are having living wages to make it, and it has this message, then we'll shift the consciousness, and people will start to, like you said, Nomza, come back and be like, I want somebody who just loves me for me. Well, I want a world where we're not just 100% focused on money, and we are here to help and empower people, protect the earth, and also like find a balance between all of the different perspectives there are in the world. Because I think when we have a balance, we're going to live in such a happier space, and we're going to see this collective consciousness come from this place of anxiety and despair and depression, and be uplifted, and people are going to be so much more inspired to be collaborators rather than competitors. And I think that's something that we could probably talk about another day, is that shift from competition to collaboration, and on a global scale, what does that look like?
Thank you so much, Amanda. For me, basically, I'll leave you with what Amanda and Nick has just said, and the process for you to achieve whatever they've said is not to compare yourself with anybody else. Know that your journey is unique, is different, and you are amazing, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to basically, when you're going through this journey of understanding your values and your beliefs and living your true authenticity, basically self-care, caring about yourself, it's okay to make mistakes. And it's also okay to basically to go through challenges, because when you are changing something, there's gonna be challenging. No one says changing your life it happens, there's a magic pill. There's no such thing. So just be yourself, and like Amanda was saying, do everything step by step. Don't try to look at Nomsa and say, wow, I want to basically to be like her. No, I had to go through so many challenges for me to be where I am today. I had to fast for 40 days, asking God for forgiveness, for carrying unforgiveness. I had to do so many things. I had to meditate. There were times where I didn't feel good about doing all these things. I wanted to give up, but there were people that were giving me encouragement, saying, Nomsa, you can do this. So I did it. But it took me years and years and years. And do I still, am I perfect? No, I'm still growing. Amanda's still growing. She's still learning. I'm still learning. Nick is still learning. He's still growing. So we are all basically still in that process. Where does it end? It ends when we die. Another life. So that's all I can say to you is be as authentic as you can, and don't try to be something else. Just be you, and let the journey begins. We are here to Ngozi Talk Shows Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. UK time. And if you want to follow Nick, you can follow him on his social media. Everything is attached on the video, and follow Amanda. And if you want to work with Amanda or Nick, just get in touch with me or get in touch with them direct. And Ngozi Talk Shows, basically, we are here to help you find your own voice, lead from within. Basically, you will stand out in your own crowd, not worrying about what people think or being judged. So just live with grace, and God bless you.